One. All right, welcome back to There Will Be Banter. We have to replace the gun-toting, lovable liberal Veronica this week, and I've decided to do so with the, self-professed wino, Maddie Houghton. How are you doing, ma'am? There she is with the glass of wine.
Maddie.
Oh, and we have the, pretty average civilian reporter, Christina Wong, drinking the eraser, as she calls it.
So good.
Look at her. There she goes. And then we have the retired CIA spook, Ron Moeller. How are you, sir?
Imbibing.
That's the right answer. As we shout tonight, we got a solid Eagle Rare pick from my bourbon group that I haven't seen in 10 months because of, hey, it's 2020, so we can't. But we have a solid episode for you tonight. 2020 continues to roll on as it has taken the life of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg over the past week. And then we will also touch on a story involving a Marine Corps veteran who took his life after some interesting circumstances leading up to that in Omaha, Nebraska. But first, we get started, as I said, with the passing of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And as predicted, the show must go on. The president has announced he will nominate her replacement this Saturday, and he states that it will be a woman. But before we get into all of that, let's come to Maddie as she introduces herself to the There Will Be Banter audience. What were your thoughts when you learned of the passing of Supreme Court Justice Ginsburg?
Oh gosh, well, devastated would be maybe a little bit dramatic, but I mean, I certainly was absolutely disheartened and saddened to see her pass. She was such a warrior. She was such a fighter. She survived, I think, 4 bouts of cancer in various forms. She fought tirelessly for 60 years to further advance justice within this country. And I'll say this personally, as a woman, I was just kind of going through and reviewing her career. I've been a big fan of hers. The notorious RGB, as she's often referred to.
Is it RBG?
What's that?
RBG.
RBG? Did I mess that up?
RGB. You said
no! Oh, no. You know why? I was on a conference call earlier today with a gentleman who said, I'm colorblind. I can't see shit on your slides. You need to, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
so
Roy G. Bibb. That was probably what that was.
Notorious RBG.
There you go.
Fabulous woman. I mean, she by the time she left the ACLU, she had wiped off 200 laws that were basically discriminatory on the books, not only for men but women. And I just started researching, do some really cool, to see what she's done for us. If she had not come along potentially and fought how she did, as a woman, I would not be able to have things like credit cards in my name. I would not be able to have a mortgage without a male co-signer. I would be just potentially discriminated against for a job that I would go after. And I work as an executive in the wine field, so that could be very true on the basis of sex. And I could also be fired from a job if I got pregnant. Not that we're thinking about that anytime soon, Eric.
Throw that out there.
So I think my thought was when she passed, not only how much she's done for this country, but just thinking God, what a horrible time that this came about. And her last, I believe, I don't know if it was her last dying wish or if it was something that she had voiced in the days leading up to her death, but that her dying wish was that she would not be replaced until after the election. So in honor of all the things that she has done for me and my fellow womankind, and you guys as well, I think she oftentimes took cases, male plaintiffs that she fought for, to kind of point the discriminatory direction back around on the legal justice system and say, hey, these discriminatory laws don't just apply to women, they also apply to males as well. So she would often take male plaintiffs and defend them, or not defend them, but
represent.
Thank you. Represent
Gotcha.
them. Yeah. And so I figured since she's done so much for us that I would write our Senator, Dianne Feinstein, out here in California, who is the member of the Judiciary Committee, and basically ask her to represent me in whatever petition that she would bring to the Judiciary Committee, specifically Senator Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, to delay the confirmation until after the election. And she actually responded, well, one of her minions responded, right, or it was automated, and she said, "Not if I can, just take a little bit of time," and quote what she wrote to me. She said, "Our country has lost a truly amazing woman with the passing of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She was a trailblazing woman, once in a generation, legal mind, and a passionate champion for the rights of all Americans. In her over 27 years on the Supreme Court, she was known as a liberal lion, but also a passionate, compassionate judge who understood the plight of everyone who came before the court. She will be missed by a grateful nation." So those are my thoughts.
Okay, no, she's right. I put down a few highlights. So 1996, there was the case of the United States versus Virginia. State schools that were funded were still able to exclude women prior to that, which is kind of hard to imagine. 1996, we were in high school during that time. No, Maddie and I were. I know, Ron, you weren't. You were over there killing terrorist, or, well, I don't know, not 96. Who knows what
the Balkans.
Yeah, you were in the Balkans. Anyway, the women at the time, as you mentioned, they couldn't have a mortgage or bank account with a signature that didn't have a male signature prior to the Equal Credit Opportunity Act of 1974, and then of course her impact on pop culture. However, that being said, Ron, you probably remember her appointment. What was your thoughts?
Yeah.
Not only on the appointment, I guess, when that happened, but what was your takeaway?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to remember which president appointed her.
Ronald Reagan.
That's right. Ronald Reagan. Wow. He appointed the liberal lion. And that was the second woman appointed to the Supreme Court.
Sandra Day O'Connor.
He appointed, that's right. He appointed the first one, who people sort of like, yeah, Sandra Day, okay. But RBG, oh gosh, yes. She's all that in the bag of chips. I get all that. I mean, and I don't discount her long, lengthy career. She did a tremendous job. She contributed a lot to U.S. jurisprudence and to reversing or eliminating discrimination across the board, not just for American female citizens, but for the males as well. Yeah, I know all those gender indecisive people that watch the podcast now are going to get upset.
Because it's a vast amount.
Well, just the Spotify people.
I'm big on the pronouns, you know.
I'm not going to worry about that. I'm too old and set in my ways. Yeah, but I think what I find interesting is, well, first off, this reported dying wish, RBG was a great believer in the Constitution. I think that's one of the reasons her and Justice Scalia got along so well and had had a good friendship, both professionally and personally.
Mm.
No, they were at opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah,
they were,
that's
but in the as people they got along really super well, according to by all accounts. I just find it interesting that supposedly this dying wish thing, I'm sure what she really said was, please, disregard the Constitution and let's wait until after the election, so, I can make up for the mistake of not retiring during the Obama administration thing. Sorry, I just have to throw that out there.
I mean,
but what I find most interesting is and I just had to throw that and grenade in the pond, but is the reaction of the rest of the people out there, the left, basically threatening to do what they're doing already, but just taking it nationwide and blowing up the country if they don't get their way. It's it's like, if I just find that amazing.
Yeah, and I get where you're coming from, and I understand it, but I knew this was good. I think I said this in the group chat immediately when this happened. It was like, all right, well, this is just going to be a repeat of when President Obama tried to nominate Merrick Garland. But that happened in March. There was still essentially the entire election year leading up to that, so I could understand.
Well, let's address that, because a lot of people point that out about
right.
Garland versus the unknown nominee here. Saying, okay, where there was the Biden rule.
Right.
But let's remember what's important here. If Chuck Schumer had been the majority leader in 2016, when President Obama nominated Merrick Garland to be an associate justice for the Supreme Court, do you think Chuck Schumer would have? He would do exactly what Mitch McConnell's doing right now. The important thing here is the party in power.
Right.
You know, as long, that's what people forget about the nuance of the Biden rule, is that as long as both the Senate and the White House are controlled by the same party, hey, there we go.
Mm-hmm. Christina, what's your takeaway with this?
Yeah, there's so much to respond to. So I jotted down a few words. Hopefully I get it all in. But, like Ron, I'm a little skeptical of her dying wish. I don't want to be a truther about this, but, that just seems like an extreme thing to go out on, that might not even be fulfilled, right? And who knows if she actually said it or not. And, again, I don't want to be some crazy extremist truther, but it seems to be very politically convenient. And that's actually, I don't think that's who, now I have to make sure I get this right, RBG, I don't think that's who she was. And, sorry,
as Maddie Downson.
I saw that eye roll. So, I think it's sad that she's become this political flashpoint. I see these young liberals who are like, fuck RBG, how dare she not retire during the Obama administration, and she's so selfish. I mean, that's just crazy, right? And Maddie gave like a beautiful tribute to her legacy, and I think she's from a bygone era, not Maddie, but our RBG, where people were civil to each other. Her best friend was Scalia. And I think she did fight for women's rights. If I'm getting this correctly, she, I think, fought to have women be accepted to the Virginia Military Institute. At least I think that's what I remember from the Daily podcast. I'm really annoyed by the New York Times Daily podcast, but this one was actually good because it talked about. Now, this goes back to the difference between her as this icon and her in reality. So she didn't even fully support Roe v. Wade. She wrote an opinion, not an opinion. I don't think she had joined the court at this time. But
that was 73.
She wrote something saying she didn't support 100% because she thought it was too broad, and she thought this was best left to the legislative branch, and she didn't want any kind of. She didn't agree with any kind of sweeping legislation on something so, I guess dramatic. And this was, when she was young, but when she first got into Harvard, all the women in the class were invited to a dinner. I think it was like 12 women, and asked why they chose to study at Harvard Law School. And she said so she could better understand what her husband did. And so, yeah, she was not the feminist icon that she, that we all sort of celebrate her as. Of course, I'm sure she changed her views from then on. But according to this podcast, who interviewed this reporter who, reported on her whole life, RBG voted with conservatives more than liberals on the Supreme Court. And I'm surprised you didn't bring this up, Eric, but she called Kaepernick's protests stupid.
Yeah, well, I remember that. I couldn't really confirm whether that was a meme or if she actually said those things. So that's why I didn't say it. So I'll defer to you because you're the actual reporter. So.
So I'll pull up the CNN. Okay, sorry. She says dumb and disrespectful. So she said, I think it's really dumb for San Francisco so quote, I think it's really dumb, end quote, for Kaepernick and others to refuse to stand for the anthem. She wouldn't lock a person up for it. But she said, I think it's a terrible thing to do. I would point out how ridiculous it seems to me to do such an act. So, I mean, that's something that I think a lot of people are sort of conveniently looking over. Not to take anything away from her amazing, legacy, but it's just, she's become this, almost like this, I wouldn't say cartoon, but just this this flashpoint, and it really doesn't do justice to who she was.
Well, I think it's also, as you stated before, it's the error where she came from, right? Where people probably couldn't really put it this way: the modern right and the modern left today were not where she came from, and that's what Ron points out perfectly. Like, do you think President Obama or President Trump would even think to nominate someone to the court who was a completely opposite of side of the political spectrum from them? No. But that was what I was talking with Maddie about last night. And Ron, I will come back to you on this and then get Maddie to react as well. But I didn't notice, because I never really paid attention as much, I never really noticed just how politicized the Supreme Court was until 2012. And it was when I was telling Maddie about last night, it was when Chief Justice Roberts actually broke with the conservatives on the court and sided with the 4 liberal justices.
You did that Brinky air quote thing, dude.
Yeah, I did. But he upheld. I remember this was like the first time I was like, man, it's the fucking Obamacare. It's the individual mandate. I got to see how this goes. And I was like, they were 5-4. So everyone thought it was going to go, the conservative route. But Chief Justice Roberts broke with his party, I guess, or whoever, and he sided with the 4 justices and upheld the individual mandate on the Affordable Care Act, which in turn upheld the entire act and made it constitutional. If you remember 2012, that went on to just be a bad year for Republicans overall. Mitt Romney lost the general election. They lost seats in the House and the Senate. It was just a bad year for Republicans. And it started, in my opinion, with that. Okay, the Democrats kind of rebounded from 2010 when the Tea Party movement came in and took the House back. But Ron, do you ever recall the Supreme Court in your time being as politicized as it has become, or is this?
Oh yes, definitely.
Okay.
Oh gosh, yes. I mean, you go back to the Warren Court and the decision to desegregate schools. Well, yeah. As correct as that decision is, at the time it was deemed very, very controversial. I mean, I remember in the 70s, Boston having I don't want to call them race riots, but peaceful yet fiery protests against school busing and things like that. Also, you need to recall the way they treated Justice Clarence Thomas.
Oh yeah, I brought that up to Maddie last night.
That was I think the first instance, and then afterwards the way they treated Robert Bork.
Yeah, the Bork.
So there's been it's always been very political, and I find it always interesting that the Democrats seem to they rely more on the courts than they can on convincing the public of good ideas, of trying to pass good legislation. So they will get judges to in the different federal courts, appeals courts and Supreme Courts and things like that, to get them to do injunctions. I mean, we always, everybody in the country likes to joke about the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals there out in, what is it, San Francisco?
Yeah.
That seems to, rule by judicial fiat. Federal judges in, pick a federal judicial district, making a nationwide pronouncement on something in, out here in the Dakotas or Montana about the Keystone Pipeline. And it just becomes ridiculous. It seems like so yes, not just the Supreme Court, but the federal judiciary has become very politicized by the Democrats, which is why the president, I think, rightfully is trumpeting. I had to put that word in there, Maddie. Sorry, it's the appointment and confirmation of 200 federal judges. Yeah. I mean, that's very remarkable, and that's why I think. Yeah, exactly, and that's why the Democrats are so upset, because they're losing that last bulwark, and they realize their kit bag of ideas is totally freaking empty. I'm trying to improve my language. I'm trying to.
No, look, hey.
I don't want to drop any F-bombs. Somebody else gets to drop an F-bomb first.
She already did. Christina already dropped the first F-bomb.
All right, there you go.
Pay the fuck attention, Ron. I mean, okay.
Sorry.
All right, Maddie. So, okay, before you react, I know there's a lot for you to respond to, but as you know, it's politics as usual. The party in power gets to do what the party in power gets to do. And so Trump will nominate a woman. So first, how do you feel about that? But then also respond, I guess, to everything you've heard over the last several minutes.
The consideration of nominating a woman to be vice president. There's a part of me that says I really don't necessarily. It doesn't have to be a woman. If there is the most qualified individual, I want the Supreme Court the most. What?
You can't hear. Can you guys hear me?
Hey, she's back.
Can you hear it? Because I can't.
We were lip reading. There will be banter lip reading.
Can you hear me now?
Oh my goodness.
We can
we
hear
gotta
you
invest in
now.
her studio setup.
Stop putting pillows over the mic.
Yeah.
No.
I'm not. While I appreciate his focus on replacing the notorious RBG with a woman, my opinion is who's the best candidate? Who is the best possible legal mind to do justice to
It's fair.
the highest court in the land? But if it just happens to be a woman, that's fantastic. I believe the front runner right now is, I'm probably going to annihilate the pronunciation.
I think it's the woman from Miami, right? The Cuban.
Last name, Amy Coney Barrett, I believe.
Yep. Yes. Correct. It's been a front runner the last 2 times.
Right. Yeah. And I think that what I'm a little upset about is that I'm not surprised. And actually, you know what? I'm not upset about it because it's to be expected. But there's so much rhetoric going on right now about this justice's background and whether or not she's fit to sit on the highest court. And predominantly there's dissension, I believe, within the Democratic Party about some senators being vocal about the fact that she's Catholic, and that has made its way into her rulings, and that has swayed her opinions and her judgments. And I don't know, like there's a part of me that's like, okay, what do I believe here, folks? And so finding that information and trying to understand if truly she is the best for our country has been a little bit murky to me. I'd love to hear the opinions of everybody else on this panel. But that's where I worry a little bit, where I'm like, okay, I see where the Democrats are going in that, and specifically, I believe it was Senator Feinstein who said, in committee, you are not fit to sit on this court because
Right, when she was being confirmed for her appeals seat.
Right. Yeah.
But nobody ever brought up Ruth Bader Ginsburg's Jewish faith, and she was a strong adherent of her Jewish faith.
Right.
Yeah. So I just find that remarkable that suddenly Christianity, Catholicism,
right.
Catholicism, whatever.
There we go.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Too much of the golden liquid.
Never
here.
too much, Ron. But yeah, so this is another thing I was talking with Maddie about last night, and Christine, I want to get your take on this. Is like, when did it become? And I know because it started from Robert Bork when just at the time Senator Kennedy opened up with this like scathing, like just absolute evisceration of this man's life because he was not a quote liberal. But when did it become just acceptable? Or Christina, if you don't know, it's fine, but still react because I know you've seen it with the recent nominations, all of them. Why do these people who get nominated for the Supreme Court, since when did it become normal to just tear apart these men and women's lives as if that's what we're supposed to be discussing, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, so I haven't really paid a lot of attention to the Supreme Court over the years. But I mean, I paid close attention to the Brett Kavanaugh nomination, and that was just horrible. I mean, that was a complete spectacle. It was very just intrusive and just sad. It was crazy, and I actually don't think we haven't hit crazy yet on this nomination. You know, right now it's all about the Breonna Taylor decision, but it's like,
you know, that's going to get brought up.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Breonna Taylor's case? You know, all it's gonna. Someone up there is gonna say that.
I'm sure the sign printers are printing up all the signs, you know, to stop, pick the name of the nominated justice.
U-Haul is printing up a lease to a van right now.
Just like they did with Kavanaugh, they had numerous different signs printed up for all the top 5 candidates to hand out to the protesters in front of the Supreme Court and the Senate and elsewhere.
But so let's say, Christina, let's just. I think I said this with Maddie last night as well. I said, let's just pretend you get nominated. You're nominated to go be, because there's no real qualification to be a Supreme Court justice. You just have to get nominated and pass the confirmation hearing. Would you put yourself and your family and your soon to be fiance or husband through that? Actually,
that's not true. You don't have to get past the confirmation hearing. You have to get past the United States Senate confirming you. That's what the Constitution says. It says advice and consent of the U.S. Senate. There's nothing about Judiciary Committee confirmation hearings and all that other, media spectacle. Sorry.
Right. No. Yeah, I get that. Okay. You're right. And that's what I said to Maddie last night. Is like this stuff probably wouldn't go on if it wasn't broadcast. So because there's cameras there, let's turn it into a. Here we go. First F-bomb. Let's turn it into a fucking show.
No, everything. I think. Since Trump's election, everything that would be otherwise normal has turned into just one never-ending show. You know?
Ooh, an S-bomb, yes.
She's diversifying her profanity. I like it.
I like that.
It's the Christina Wong show. We're just here.
And yeah, so I mean, I think we're going to be in for a big thing. Like you said, Eric. I mean, it's like Democrats. I think it was Eric or Ron, but Democrats have sort of they're banking on whoever is going to be the next justice for the outcome of the 2020 elections, the immigration, healthcare, abortion. I mean, I don't know how much I want to get into this, but this is sort of why I told someone in the other room to just go ahead, register with Democratic Party. I'm like, just imagine, you have, Dems take the Senate. They turn, we had, I think for the first time, the House vote for DC becoming a state. So then let's say you get 2 more Democratic senators.
Puerto Rico, right.
And they turn Puerto Rico into 2 more Democratic senators. And then they're pushing for the end of the filibuster, Democrats are, and 2 more Supreme Court justices. Then it's like, they just want, then they can push their agenda through without the popular support or without sufficient support from the whole country.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the scary thing, and historically, so maybe not in 2016, which is sort of problematic, but historically there's been 29 vacancies on a Supreme Court during a presidential election year, and the president has made a nomination 29 times. 17 of those times, when the president and the Senate are of the same party, the person has been confirmed. And there's only been 2 times where the president is not of the same party as the Senate that someone's gotten confirmed. So that's kind of like, the history. Although I would say 2016, made it a little bit more difficult, made it a little bit more murky.
Yeah, and I think the reason it's more of a show now is after what Harry Reid did before he left the Senate is it used to be 60 votes to become confirmed, and now it's just the majority. So now whoever's the majority party gets to make the fucking charade, or at least approve it. But we're going to go through the charade, regardless. Anybody else? Any last parting shots on that before we transition on?
Well, I think Christina forgot the most important change that a Democratic Senate Congress would want to implement is get rid of the Electoral College, and that would of course be a constitutional amendment which will never get through the states that will lose whatever leverage we have, yay, South Dakota.
I think Maddie might want to weigh in on this, because I feel like based on a conversation we had a few weeks ago, I think she's in favor of getting rid of the Electoral College.
I feel like if I do comment on this, we're going to open up this debate and not be able to move on to the next topic of conversation.
A six-pack can of worms,
or you might end up on the couch tonight.
You have a great couch. We know that already, so it's fine. Look, if you want to talk about getting rid of the Electoral College, feel free to have at it. I am a big fan of the Electoral College because people like Ron, who live in South Dakota, should not be subjected to the whims of those who live in states like California.
Whims.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. If
and vice versa.
Without the Electoral
College, should dictate how people in California live.
Well, actually, we should, because you guys would live a lot better. We have no state income tax. You would have more money in your pocket, Maddie.
That's right. My home of record is Florida, so I no state income.
And we have a budget surplus. So yeah. But hey, so seriously, I mean, our whole system of government is federalism. It's based on checks and balances. Without the Electoral College leveling the playing field, despite majority vote and all that, the popular vote propaganda that we've been fed for the last 3.5, 4 years. I mean, states, the New York, California, pick another couple populous blue states would rule the country. And the rest of us would either be like District 12 in the Hunger Games and, fulfill whatever Central City needs, or we'd break apart. And I think the wisdom of the founders is really imperative. And I would encourage everybody that listens to this to read the Federalist Papers. Yes, it's a great cure for insomnia, but to read the Federalist Papers, they're short. They're only like 40 pages. But also read the U.S. Constitution and try to understand what the founders have envisioned and why, yes, majority rules, but also there has to be respect for the smaller states. It's the same reason that the House of Representatives, is 435 representatives based on population, but also each state has 2 senators. So it balances us out. That's the way I think. Without it, this whole country falls apart, and it becomes a massive shit show, because there is no way that the people out in the Rocky Mountain West and the Midwest are going to allow the Governor Newsom and Governor Cuomo and that sort of policies to dictate the rest of the country. That'll never work.
Well, I mean that kind of ties into something I said in the group chat this morning, where people were discussing, the legalization of certain drugs, if that's what we're going to talk about. And I said, you're right. Yeah.
No, we're not going to talk about that.
I know, but the stuff, it's like you're saying though, some of those ideas work when you're in the middle of nowhere, but they don't work when you're in a highly dense populated city like San Francisco or New York or Los Angeles, whatever. So, right. And that goes both ways. Like neither side should be able to dictate how the other is. And that's right. And you point out the Federalist Papers, and everyone loves the musical Hamilton, but no one wants to actually read what the man wrote, because he did a ton of writing. He wrote the Federalist Papers. So, when you have some time, when you're done watching the musical, maybe go read what the actual guy wrote and stop paying.
Well, him and Madison and John Jay and a few others. Yeah. But yeah.
I'm just saying.
I was forced to read them in high school.
I know you're not. People aren't anymore, babe. I'm just
I mean, all you have to do is get on Twitter for about 5 seconds and look at the disintegration of American civics. People do not understand how. I mean, they haven't even watched Schoolhouse Rock, and that's easy.
How is the bill made? I know.
I'm serious.
No, he's not wrong.
I'm walking up the Capitol steps.
Yeah. You know what's funny about that is everyone laughs, but that video, I can't remember. It was one of my classes at the University of Central Florida for political science. We watched that video on how a bill is. But they don't do. I didn't do that in high school. We didn't, and that was Florida. Now I don't know how. But Maddie, you went to high school in New York.
Yeah. Upstate New York.
Yeah, upstate New York. Okay, so yeah, I know how New York has a great public education system when it comes to high school. Florida does not. Okay, so. But yeah, all right. We've touched on all that. We can discuss, tearing down the Electoral College later. Let's move on. Ron, this was something you mentioned, and I know we wanted to transition to it, but Jake Gardner, Omaha bar owner, prior service Marine, diagnosed with I think a few brain injuries during his time in the Marine Corps, but he ultimately ended up taking his life while in the process of surrendering, because a grand jury in Omaha, Nebraska, indicted him for murder of James Scurlock, who he killed in what, if you read about it, it reads like self-defense, an incident in the May 30th. The district.
I thought it was manslaughter, but
was it okay? So manslaughter. Either way, with the multitude of charges, he was facing essentially 90 years in prison. Okay, so it wasn't
right.
There was
it was interesting that originally the DA declined to press any charges.
Right.
And then based on public, and this happened, let's remember, this happened May 30th before all the Minneapolis and all the other things blew up, Atlanta and Louisville, etc. But based on public, pressure groups against the DA, he reopened it, had a special prosecutor, special grand jury impaneled, and they came back with these indictments. It just, and it's tragic that he lost his bar lease or leases to his various bars in Omaha. I mean, his GoFundMe page that was created on his behalf was canceled by the GoFundMe people, the corporation, whatever. But what really bothers me most about the whole tragedy of Mr. Gardner is that people on the internet were cheering his death.
Yeah.
So supposed politicians and thought leaders, wannabe serious people, are cheering his death. Another white nationalist, another Trumper, another racist, blah blah blah, has offed himself. And it's the flip side of the Rittenhouse thing from Kenosha, where people in the right wing were cheering his actions in killing those two people. I won't call them gentlemen, but those two people, and justifying the killing by, well, one of those guys was a convicted sex offender, and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, we're a nation of laws, and if we don't adhere to the laws and not give in to public pressures and suddenly become, individuals become judges and juries and executioners, I mean, this country begins to, fray at the seams, and that weakens our whole fabric, and that's not a good thing. And that's the reason I suggested this subject was I was really distraught by the reaction of political leaders in both Nebraska and Portland, Oregon, where Mr. Gardner killed himself, and other national media types that cheered his death. It was just disgusting.
Yeah, so we talked about this briefly, but Maddie, what was your reaction as you read through this?
I had so many questions. My first reaction was, what? There were so many things that I felt like all the literature, all of the articles that were written about it, I had to go back and reread a couple of times. To be honest with you, I was like, wait, what happened? Wait, what? What? But overall, my first reaction was, this is just a no-win situation on all sides. It just felt like one of those bad, horrible French movies where you watch it and you still don't understand what happened, and it makes you depressed and you walk away angry and sad.
Well, you watched Tenet in French? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, we watched Tenet, but we didn't finish Tenet.
You told him?
I told everybody that we watched Tenet, and it was awful. Nobody go watch Tenet.
Sorry, I had to throw a little humor in there. You left it wide open, Maddie.
Ron, don't get me started, man. I'm about to write a very angry letter to the director of that movie. No, I just, there were so many things about it that just felt bungled on all sides. And I think it just speaks to the fact that as a nation and as a country, we're so angry in so many places. And at that particular point in time, I can't help but wonder, like, as Eric had mentioned earlier, what would the situation have been different if that had happened, that incident had happened after everything in Minneapolis and all in Atlanta. And I feel like what the biggest issue is here is that there is an absence of presence of sound mind, of somebody to say, hey, this is not the way. I understand you're angry. I understand you're upset. The world is scary right now. You may feel like you are not being heard or seen, and that people in power are not doing you justice, and that enough is enough and you need to express how you feel, but the way that you're doing it is not the way. I mean, I'm the type, Eric will tell you, I'm the type of person that will give everybody the benefit of the doubt. And when I first read the article, I thought to myself, everything that I see here looks like self-defense. Everything that I see here points to mental health issues and potential questions about how we treat our military after severe head trauma injuries and things like—
It's a whole other show.
Which is a whole other show, and a host of issues that I personally don't understand, because I'm not a veteran. I've never fired a gun in my entire life. I don't know what it's like.
Say what, Eric? You've never taken her out to the range?
We're trying to
I
get
keep
guns still,
asking!
Ron. We're in California. As I've put out in the chat, there's nothing here. It's gone. It's
But
all
I
bought
don't-
up.
I will say this: the things that really when I read the articles, I was like, "Whoa, guys! Like this, what?" So some of the things I jotted down. I don't understand what the fuck up was with the whole warrant process.
Everyone has dropped an F-bomb tonight. I like it. Okay, go.
I don't understand what the fuck was about the terrorism charges. Ron, I think I watched a podcast with you and Eric earlier, maybe like a month or two ago, where you read the definition, or it may have been Nick, somebody else, who read the very definition of terrorism. And I thought to myself, how did we go from the DA originally saying that this guy acted in self-defense to all of a sudden appointing a special prosecutor, turning around? Now this guy is facing charges 95 years. I think it was 95 years.
Yeah, it's the Twitter mob. That's what we're alluding to.
Assault, account of terrorism, and the grand jury indicted him on all of those things. And I feel like there's a major section in the middle that I don't understand and that I don't have visibility to. And I tried to look up the details of what the grand jury saw that led to the indictment of those charges, and I can't find them. And that's, I think, that pisses me off the most, is where is the visibility into this information that can help inform the world about what's truly happening? And that's where I get worried for our country.
Well,
maybe I'm not digging far enough down into—
well, grand jury proceedings and the way they're conducted, those are confidential. But
okay, all right.
But you know, I'm sure the way that the prosecutor that was presenting the case to the grand jury, you know, the way he presented things to the grand jury, I mean, words matter, how you present them matters. And if the grand jury didn't ask, you know, good interrogative questions, I mean, I could see that.
I think Maddie is alluding to the lack of some sort of process, because the DA did find that Jake Gardner acted in self-defense. And then, so I found an article that said he met with activists. And after that's when he appointed the special counsel, a Black special counsel. And, you know, Ron, you said that the Twitter and the mob has become the judge, jury, and executioner. Yep. And that really struck me, because I think in this case, we're seeing that it's true. And, you know, I think we're seeing, you know, it all starts on social media, but now we're seeing street justice. So we're seeing the Twitter mob move to the streets. And so you've got mob rule, you have actual street justice, and it's, as we've seen, it's a successful model. So it's encouraging more and more people to go out to the street. And, you know, and that's why these people, they're celebrating this, because it's like street mob justice worked in this case. And I've seen just over, Trump's administration, just the left, and maybe even before this, but I wasn't paying attention, but the left has become, kind of what they hate. They've sort of dehumanized Trump supporters and,
Oh yeah. Well, yeah.
Oh yeah.
We just talked about the yard sign of the I felt
I'm in fear for my life. I'm a PhD from Brown University, but I'm in fear for my life. Oh my God, a Trump sign.
Yeah, it's just yeah. No, I see what you're saying, Christina.
Well, the thing, Christina, is to remember historically, and Robespierre found this out during the French Terror after the French Revolution. Is the mob once incited, has no direction. It just goes off whichever way, and I mean, and the guillotine will take everybody and anybody that shows up, and I'm sorry, I mean, you got to go back historically and look at the French Terror, and it was, I mean,
It was brutal.
It was.
It has nothing on what's going on today.
No, not yet, and
or what's going on today has nothing on that.
Well, and that's what this is what I contend, and I know others. I think Ron maybe even disagrees, but I still hold on to this at this point, is I don't think these people are capable of, they're out there, they can cause some mayhem and they can do what they do, but they're not capable of taking and holding territory, number one, but they're also not capable of actually, I think these people are going to get to our leadership in they're not going to. That's how I feel at this point. Now,
let's use the ISIS model. They don't, so ISIS, gained and held territory, but
yeah,
okay, so their territorial gains have been erased,
right?
But it's still an idea. Al Qaeda is still an idea.
No, their ideas, they persist. I just don't think anyone who really prescribes to Antifa outside of this super fringe. Like they're not making their case. Ron, you talked about this, to make your case to these people, right? You have to make your case. We ran out of that. We're just assuming, and we've given up on preaching ideas. Antifa doesn't even try to make an impressionable case. They don't make their case. They just cause.
They don't have. They have. There's enough.
It's the same as Occupy Wall Street. Like they didn't.
Well, there's enough passivity out there, and those by not saying, silence is consent, and the old the 70s terror model in Germany, the Baader Meinhof gang and the Red Army faction, they were only a handful of folks, less 6-8 people, but they had a super large. I mean, the way we did it was, or we tracked them was, here's the hardcore, the actual people that did it, but then here's their infrastructure support of safe houses, the U-Haul truck rental people, for that sort of thing, and then outside of that is a much larger circle of people who passively support, like, it's those bankers, they're all trash because they killed a few German bankers and industrialists and things like that. They took the rocket shot at the U.S. Army general in Germany.
Yep.
The American occupiers, that sort of thing. So I don't know. Christina, you look like you have something to add.
Yeah, no, it's crazy because I kind of saw what you were talking about. So I went out to my first protest yesterday.
Last night, yes, you did.
And it was because I saw that they were in the vicinity. I won't say exactly where, but
you said last night.
I said when, but not where. But
she dropped in right after the report on it. And I liked it. It was good.
I mean, I have been avoiding these protests, and it's funny because I'm not actually very far away from all of it, but I've never heard it, so it's almost like I'm insulated. So I saw that they were kind of where I was, and I ran out, much to the chagrin of my employers, who are like, be careful. So I saw the structure, and there are the lead agitators. They're the ones who have the megaphones. They're the ones who are sort of leading and pumping people up. And then you've got the very passive people who are just kind of walking along and maybe just shouting, but not really aggressive. And then you have like the people who are obstructing with their bikes. They're not fighting, but they're kind of doing some sort of resistance. And then you've got these medics, and apparently you've got legal people. So there's
Medics.
a whole, yeah. And there's a whole infrastructure of people, and it's like by themselves, they are so weak. I mean, I saw a clash between the police and the protesters, and that was like that was a huge adrenaline rush, to be honest. And
Welcome
yeah,
to
so
combat.
yeah, it was like exciting and scary, and yeah, that was a rush.
That's
But
combat.
I forgot what I was going to say. Shoot. Okay. Well.
You saw the
Disorganized.
protesters and you saw the protesters and the police clash.
Yeah. And so, oh yes. Okay. So by themselves, very cowardly, but in a group, all you need is like that one agitator, and then
That's mob mentality. That's yeah. That's all that is.
And this one guy who was like especially very aggressive with the cops, he got arrested. The mob moved on, and he's like, "Why am I being arrested?" His friends are gone, and he's like back to like, and so it's very scary that like even though you said, who are these guys? They're all out of shape. They're all pretty weak by themselves. But together, they I don't know if this is terrorist tactics or not. You mentioned ISIS, but together they're kind of they're a challenge.
Well, I think, and Ron may be able to either back me up or he'll probably provide more insight. I think the difference between ISIS and these people is ISIS is they had a proclivity for violence, and they were not afraid to do so. These people I don't think they're ready for that.
But they're learning. I mean, they're not going to stick cops in 55-gallon drums and light them afire like they did the Jordanian pilot. But they're learning, and it's a skill set that unfortunately they will gain. I mean, it needs to be stamped out quickly and early and often, and those agitators need to be separated from the fish, and so they just will like hold up a sign and go, whatever. But you get rid of those megaphoners and the organizers, and the whips that guide people along, and we can nip this in the bud. But in places like Portland, Oregon, and elsewhere, it's too far gone. I mean, now that the police are playing defense and constantly retreating, so it's
All right. Well, so we've had a great discussion about a few issues, but we're not going to end on negativity. Maddie, I'd like to thank you for filling in for Veronica's absence and doing your part, sipping the wine, sitting atop your throne in the other room. But we're going to end on a positivity, because if you've been following the Goons, which some of us are a part of, but also if you're not, and you've been listening to at least social media and some hashtags, you understand that we have put forth an effort to get Sergeant First Class Alwyn Cashe the Medal of Honor. We have the Operation Cash Money. We have his name is Alwyn Cashe. But now, Christina, who's written some articles on it, she's going to update us and take us out on a note of positivity and tell us what has gone on recently with this effort. Christina, what do you got?
Yes. So the House just passed a bill that will allow the White House to award, or whoever's in the White House, to award Sergeant First Class Alwyn Cashe posthumously the Medal of Honor. Long overdue, well-deserved. He rushed into a burning Bradley fighting vehicle to pull out 6 of his men.
While on fire.
While on fire. So he was in a Bradley fighting vehicle. He was in the gunner's position. It hit an IED. He was only slightly injured, but he went back to pull his driver out, who was in flames. He pulled him out, extinguished the flames, and then he went back. And he went back for 6 more of his men. He pulled them out. He caught on fire, and he kept on pulling them out. And he was the worst injured, and he was flown. I think he was in the hospital when he could.
When he passed. Yeah, a couple of weeks later after the incident.
When he could speak, and this was in 2005, when he could speak, he said, "How are my boys?"
Yep.
And I believe 4 of the 6 died, and he wept. And that was all he was concerned about. And before he died, he said, "I had made my peace with God, but I wasn't sure if my boys had." I mean, he was just focused on his men just throughout the entire time, completely selfless. And so due to public pressure, due to his family fighting, public pressure from the goons, it's a reality. The House passed the bill unanimously, and it's now heading to the Senate. Senator Tom Cotton, he introduced a bill along with several other folks, but he's leading it, and they're going to try to get that passed by unanimous consent. I hear hopefully next week. And there's a lot going on, so I think people have to keep the pressure up for the Senate.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and this means a little bit more to myself just because, like I said, Sergeant First Class Cashe, he's from Oviedo, Florida. Okay, I grew up and lived most of my life in Orlando. Oviedo's a suburb of Orlando. When I was a drill sergeant in 2009 and 2010 at Fort Benning, this man had one of our drill sergeants was in the 3rd ID at the time. And served with them during that time, and every time we had an opportunity, he would recant Sergeant Cashe's story. So Sergeant Cashe's his name, his legacy, what he did, it's been a part of our lore within the Army for several years. And yes, he was awarded the Silver Star. I don't want anyone to think like he's been forgotten, but the definition of the Medal of Honor reads like this man's story. And I just hope we finally get this passed. And I get. There's been a lot of progress over the last week and a half. So yes, I hope this actually gets done. Christina, thank you for the update. Ron, take us out. What would you like to send out? Yes, that's Ron.
Yeah,
Mullen,
thanks.
CIA spook. He's a man full of words. What do you got? Nothing?
I think it's remember to respect one another like the 4 of us have done here. Ideas are good, but violence is bad. And Maddie, gosh darn it, go to the range. You haven't learned any bad habits yet, and don't let Eric teach any bad habits. And don't flinch when you pull the trigger. Don't anticipate. Just have fun, and just.
I've been asking.
Feel the power.
If we could purchase a firearm in this state, we would.
Dude, just take her to Nevada.
That's another story for another time. Thank you for everyone joining in to us. Maddie for filling in for Veronica. There will be banter. Remember, you may not think like us, but you probably think like one of us. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you next week.